Hey everyone. So if you're studying German, you've probably had those moments where a sentence feels less like language and more like, well, a really complex mathematical equation. Today, we're taking a step back to look at the underlying architecture of German grammar. We aren't just going to memorize rules. We're going to treat German exactly like what it is, a highly logical, brilliantly structured building project. Think of this explainer as your official construction manual. Okay, let's dive right in.
If you're learning German, you've absolutely hit this wall right at the beginning. I mean, in English, we just use the man, the woman, the child. Easy, right? But in German, you've got der Mann, die Frau, and das Kind. Navigating three grammatical genders can feel like a massive roadblock, but I promise you, there is a highly systematic way to approach this. It's really not just random memorization.
Here is our roadmap for this explainer. 1. Nouns, genders, and articles. 2. Cracking the four cases. 3. Adjectives, adding color. 4. Verbs, the sentence engine. And 5. The trickiest prepositions. We're going to build our German sentences from the ground up, block by block. Starting with section 1, nouns, genders, and articles, building the foundation. Let's lay down that absolute base level for our construction site. In German, every single noun has a grammatical gender, and it's absolutely crucial to learn the article der, die, or das, right along with the noun. Now, you really don't have to rely entirely on brute force memorization here. There are some incredibly reliable rules of thumb based on how a word ends that can help you guess a noun's gender. For instance, if a noun ends in like der Einbrecher for burglar, it's generally masculine. If it ends in heit, or schaft, like die Freundschaft for friendship, you're almost definitely looking at a feminine noun. And if you see a diminutive ending in chen or lein, like das Kittchen for a small cat, it is always neuter. These shortcuts are absolute lifesavers on our construction site. So let's move to plurals and see how this builds. Just like identifying genders, making nouns plural actually follows predictable structural rules too. You might add an E for masculine nouns, turning Tisch into Tisha. Feminine nouns often take an N, turning Tür into Tüden. And neuter nouns generally take an error, like Haus becoming Häuser. But actually pay close attention to that last one. Notice how the A in Haus transformed into an A with those two little dots? You've got to watch out for those vowels transforming into umlauts when you build your plurals. They love to sneak up on you. Moving on to part 2, cracking the four cases, giving nouns a job. Now that we have our building blocks, the nouns and their genders, we actually need to give them something to do. If nouns are the blocks, cases are basically their specific job descriptions on the site. German has 4 cases, and each one essentially answers a specific diagnostic question to figure out a noun's job. The nominative is the boss, the subject doing the action. We find it by asking wer oder was, who or what. The genitive shows possession. We ask wessen, whose. The dative case is the indirect receiver of an action, so we ask wem, to whom. And finally, the accusative case is the direct target of the action, found by asking wen oder was, who or what. Think of these questions as your ultimate diagnostic tools for figuring out exactly what job a noun is doing. Because of these different jobs, our little articles, der, die, and das, kind of have to change their uniforms. We call this declension. Notice the pattern in the masculine row, where der changes to dan for the accusative. But honestly, my favorite part is looking at the plural row at the bottom. It literally only has one form per case, completely regardless of gender. A much-needed break from the heavy lifting, am I right? Okay, section 3, adjectives. Adding color. Decorating the house. Foundation set? Check. Jobs assigned? Check. Now it's time for the fun part. We are going to bring in the adjectives. These are the paint and decorations that make our grammatical structure beautiful and descriptive. But here is the catch. In German, adjectives must adjust and agree with their noun's gender, number, and case. So if you have a definite article, like der, the adjective needs an ending. For a masculine subject, it's der große Baum, the big tree. But look closely at the dative and genitive rows. Almost everywhere you look, the adjectives just take a simple, repetitive N ending. Once you spot that pattern, decorating your sentences becomes a whole lot faster. And when you want to compare things, German is incredibly straightforward. It's wonderfully similar to English, actually. You've got the positive form, like schnell for fast. For the comparative, you just add an ER, making it schneller or faster. And for the superlative, you use am and add esten, giving us am schnellsten for fastest. Simple, elegant, and super familiar. Section 4, verbs, the sentence engine. powering the machine. We have this beautiful, fully decorated structure, but right now it's just sitting there. We need an engine. Let's move on to verbs, the powerful engines that finally make our perfectly constructed sentences drive forward. There are three main types of engines here. First up, weak verbs. I want to reassure you, these are your best friends. They are completely regular and follow the rules perfectly. Then we have strong verbs, which take regular endings but change their stem vowel. And finally, irregular verbs. Look, there's no sugarcoating it. You just have to memorize these. But the good news is, mastering the big three irregulars, sein to be, haben to have, and werden to become, unlocks your ability to build almost every other tense in the whole language.
So here's our spatial map of time in German. There are 6 tenses, but native speakers actually do something really fascinating here. While the preterite is technically the official past tense, spoken German heavily favors the perfect tense for things that happened in the past. If you're telling a story about yesterday at the office, you're using the perfect. And furthermore, native speakers will often just use the present tense to talk about the future, as long as the context is clear. Like, in 10 Jahren bin ich reich. In 10 years, I am rich. It works perfectly.
So, the absolutely crucial point is knowing how to build that incredibly popular perfect tense. You just need 2 pieces, an auxiliary verb in the present tense, either haben or sein, and a past participle tacked on to the very end of the sentence. Now, how do you choose between haben and sein? It's all about what the engine is actually doing. Verbs of motion or a change of state usually take sein, while almost all other verbs take haben. And now for the final stretch. Section 5, the trickiest prepositions, steering the vehicle. Our vehicle is built, it's painted, the engine is roaring, but we definitely need a steering wheel. Let's talk about the notorious two-way prepositions, or Wechselpräpositionen, which steer the exact direction and location of our sentence. Meet the 9 chameleons of German grammar. Auf, on top, unter, under, über, over, for, in front of, hinter, behind, neben, next to, zwischen, between, in, and on, at, or on a vertical surface. Why are they so tricky? Because unlike normal prepositions, they do not stick to just one case. They demand completely different cases depending entirely on the context of the situation. But here is the ultimate trick to mastering these two-way prepositions. It all boils down to detecting a crossing of borders, or movement, versus a static location. If you are asking wohin, to where into which location is the object moving, you have an active change of position, and you must use the accusative case. But if you're asking wo, where, a static location occurring in a confined space, you must use the dative case. Motion means accusative, stillness means dative. And here is a brilliant little shortcut to help you spot the difference. Certain pairs of verbs have this dynamic built right into them. Stellen means to put something down in an upright position. That actively implies motion, forcing the accusative. But its static twin, stehen, to stand, implies zero motion, forcing the dative. The exact same goes for legen versus liegen and setzen versus sitzen. Pay close attention to the verb and it will often practically hand you the answer for which case the preposition needs. Let's put this to the test in a real-world scenario. Picture a bustling street scene. You've got people running, animals climbing, people sitting down, and things just kind of hanging out. Every single action happening forces us to choose between motion and stillness, which means we are constantly choosing between the accusative and dative cases. Breaking it down. Imagine seeing a woman running through a doorway. Eine Frau läuft in das Haus. She is actively crossing a border, moving into a new location. That answers wohin, so we use the accusative in das. But what about a man just standing at the window of a cafe? Ein Mann steht an dem Fenster. He isn't changing locations. He is totally static. That answers wo, so we use the dative an dem. It is the exact same concept applied to literally everything happening in the scene. And there you have it, the whole shebang. What initially looks like a chaotic tangle from the outside is actually a highly logical set of interlocking systems just waiting for you to practice. You've got the foundation, the job descriptions, the decorations, the engine, and the steering wheel. But it begs a really interesting question. If German grammar forces you to be this spatially precise about motion and location, how might mastering this architecture actually change the way you think? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and happy building.